Buckle up, because today we're going deep, really deep, into the wild world of cryptocurrency.
Wild is right. I mean, the headlines practically write themselves these days.
Exactly. And today we're focusing on how companies are trying to wrap their heads and their balance sheets around this whole Bitcoin adoption thing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time to be watching this space.
It really is. And we're starting with a company that's basically gone all in on Bitcoin, MicroStrategy.
Oh yeah, they are all over the headlines.
They are. Just imagine being so bullish on Bitcoin that you create an entire executive level position just to champion it within the business world.
That's MicroStrategy for you.
Sure.
And it's not like they're just dipping their toes in the water either. They're diving headfirst into the deep end.
Okay, so explain this to me, because it's one thing to, buy a bunch of Bitcoin, which they've already done in a big way, but it's another thing entirely to create this whole manager of Bitcoin advocacy role. What's the strategy there?
So it's not just about managing their current holdings, which, by the way, is a pretty sizable chunk of change already. This new role, this Bitcoin advocate, is all about pushing for widespread adoption across the corporate landscape.
It's like they're building a Bitcoin pulpit and saying, all right, who wants to preach the good word?
Yeah, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. The job description itself is basically a crypto enthusiast's dream job. Organizing a huge, huge annual Bitcoin conference, leading educational initiatives, potentially even setting up a lobbying shop in D.C. to, cozy up to policymakers.
Wow, they are not messing around, are they? So what kind of person, in your view, thrives in a role like that? What does it take to not just understand this technology, but to actually convince skeptical executives that Bitcoin is the future?
You're talking about someone who's a hybrid, part tech whiz, part visionary leader, part master communicator. They need to be able to grasp the complexities of blockchain, sure, but they also need that charisma, that business savvy to translate that into real-world adoption.
It's a high-stakes game they're playing, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, if MicroStrategy is right, this Bitcoin advocate could end up shaping the future of finance.
And if they're wrong?
Well, you'll be a fascinating and probably expensive lesson learned.
So while MicroStrategy is busy building their Bitcoin, I don't know, should we call it an empire?
Empire, platform, soapbox. It's anyone's guess at this point.
True, true. But the point is, the rest of the crypto world, they're not exactly sitting around waiting to see what happens.
Nope, this train keeps on rolling.
And speaking of, remember El Salvador?
Oh yeah, how could we forget?
The country that went all in, really, really all in on Bitcoin, made it legal tender back in 2021, if I remember correctly.
That's right. A bold move for sure, and one that really illustrates the, let's call it, tension between the old guard of finance and this new wave of crypto.
Because it's been interesting watching it all unfold. El Salvador takes this leap, embraces Bitcoin, and then you have these institutions like the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, urging caution.
Yeah, the IMF has definitely not been shy about expressing their concerns. Financial stability, consumer protection. They're worried about the volatility of Bitcoin, the potential for, money laundering, and what all of this could mean for El Salvador's economy in the long run.
And hasn't the IMF been pushing El Salvador to, backtrack a bit on their Bitcoin adoption?
They have. They've been pretty vocal about it, actually.
And what's been the response?
Oh, El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, he's basically doubled down on the country's Bitcoin strategy.
Oh, wow. So they're sticking to their guns.
Very much so. Bukele has consistently argued that Bitcoin is a net positive for El Salvador. He says it's promoting financial inclusion, attracting foreign investment.
So you've got this really interesting dynamic playing out, right? You've got the established players like the IMF wary of disruption, and then you have these, I guess you could say, upstarts like El Salvador forging ahead with their own vision.
And it's not just a philosophical debate anymore. This is real-world stuff with potentially huge implications. It's a fascinating and, frankly, unpredictable situation to watch unfold.
No kidding. And it does beg the question, how do you balance the need for innovation, for pushing boundaries, with the importance of regulation and, protecting people?
It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer. Too much regulation and you stifle innovation, but too little, and you leave the door open for, well, all sorts of unintended consequences.
It's like walking a tightrope.
Exactly. That tightrope gets even more precarious as crypto becomes more mainstream, more integrated into our everyday lives.
And speaking of mainstream, we've got to talk about Visa. Because even the giants of the financial world, they're starting to take notice of blockchain technology.
They are. Visa, MasterCard, even some of the big banks, They're all exploring how this technology might fit into their world.
And Visa specifically, they've been making some moves with their Visa Tokenized Asset Platform, VTE, I think it's called.
Yeah, VTAP is essentially their way of dipping their toes into the world of digital assets.
So not quite going full El Salvador and adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, but still experimenting and exploring the possibilities.
Exactly. It's a more measured approach, for sure.
Right.
But it shows that even these financial behemoths, they see something in this technology. They're recognizing that blockchain isn't going away anytime soon, and they need to figure out how to adapt.
So tell me more about this VTAP thing. What is it and what's Visa hoping to achieve with it?
So VTAPE is all about managing digital assets, but specifically those that are tied to like traditional currencies. Think stable coins, which are
Whoa.
pegged to the value of the US dollar or other fiat currencies, or central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which are basically digital versions of a country's official currency.
So still playing by some of the rules of traditional finance, but using blockchain to make things faster, cheaper, more efficient.
You got it. And the fact that Visa is aiming to pilot VTAPE on the Ethereum blockchain by 2025,
Wow.
and that they're targeting major players like institutional investors and central banks, tells you this isn't just some side project for them.
This is them recognizing the potential for blockchain to really shake things up in the financial world.
It really makes you wonder, what does a future where blockchain and traditional finance coexist actually look like? What are the possibilities, but also what are the challenges?
It's a question we'll be grappling with for years to come, I'm sure. So we've talked about how companies like MicroStrategy and Visa are embracing blockchain technology, but there's another player in the crypto space that's been making headlines lately, Bitcoin ETFs.
Yeah, the ETF landscape has been, well, explosive is probably the best word for it.
Explosive in a good way, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, definitely. For the longest time, if you were an institutional investor and you wanted to get exposure to Bitcoin, your options were pretty limited.
And that's where Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust, GBTC, came in, right? It was the Bitcoin ETF for a long time.
Right, exactly. But then BlackRock and Fidelity, these are heavy hitters in the financial world. They decided to throw their hats in the ring with their own Bitcoin ETFs,
And I imagine that shook things up a bit.
to say the least. BlackRock's offering, ticker symbol IBIT, it's already surpassed GBTC in size, and Fidelity's EPF is climbing the charts quickly too. It's a whole new ballgame.
So what does that tell you about how Wall Street is viewing Bitcoin these days? Because for a while there, it was seen as this risky fringe investment, right?
And to some extent, that perception is still out there. But I think these ETFs, especially from established players like BlackRock and Fidelity, they signal a real shift. It's a sign that Bitcoin is being taken seriously as an investment asset, as part of a diversified portfolio.
So does that mean the Wild West days of crypto are over?
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it's still a very volatile market,
Yeah.
still a lot of uncertainty, but you can't deny that it's maturing, becoming more mainstream.
Fair enough. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? We've seen some reminders lately that there's still a dark side to the crypto world.
Unfortunately, yes. The recent news about the Australian Federal Police seizing $6.4 million in crypto linked to criminal activity, that's a stark reminder that this technology can be used for both good and bad.
It's a shame because it feels like every time crypto takes a step forward, something like this happens to drag it back.
It's true, and it highlights the importance of, robust regulation, law enforcement agencies that are equipped to handle crypto-related crimes.
Because it's not just about catching the criminals, right? It's also about protecting the legitimate players in this space.
Absolutely. And that's where organizations like the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, or COPA, come in. They're focused on fighting back against patent trolls.
Patent trolls. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that term.
So basically, a patent troll is a company or an individual that acquires patents, not to actually develop anything, but to sue other companies, often those that are actually innovating and creating new things.
Wow. That's pretty shady.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and it can stifle innovation. So COPA, they're trying to create a more level playing field, a space where blockchain companies can focus on building the future without constantly looking over their shoulder.
It's definitely a multifaceted and constantly evolving landscape. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from MicroStrategy's bold bet on Bitcoin, to Visa's foray into the world of digital assets, to the ongoing battle against cybercrime and patent trolls. We even touched on El Salvador's grand experiment with Bitcoin as legal tender.
And we didn't even scratch the surface of everything happening in the crypto world. There's Ripple's expansion in the UAE, SoftBank's massive investment in OpenAI, even former President Trump launching a DeFi project. It's a
Yes.
whirlwind of activity.
It really is. So I guess the question is, where does this all leave us? What's the takeaway from this deep dive into the world of crypto?
I think the biggest takeaway is that this technology, it's not going away. It's evolving, it's maturing, and it's starting to reshape the world around us in profound ways. Whether you're CEO, an investor, or just someone who uses the internet, blockchain technology is going to impact your life.
It's not just about the technology itself, it's about the possibilities, the opportunities, and yes, the challenges that come with it.
Exactly. It's a fascinating, exciting, and sometimes scary time to be paying attention to this space.
Well said. And on that note, I think we'll have to wrap up this deep dive into the crypto waters. Until next time, this has been your guide to the ever-evolving, always unpredictable world of cryptocurrency.